I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Welcome everybody to another episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. But I'd also love to welcome Stacey. I've got Stacey Munson-Burger with me today. Thanks so much for joining me.
That's okay. Thanks for the invite, Leanne.
You are so welcome, because today we're going to talk about something that's really commonly experienced in families where kids have additional needs. And lots of time, we talked a little bit about the statistics of parents separating. Actually, I've kind of jumped too far ahead because that's what you do, right? You do a lot of that day to day in your work as a lawyer.
Yes.
But I want to ask you some ins and outs about it, but maybe you should introduce yourself first. So tell everybody about you. Who are you and what do you do?
We're just too keen to
To
promote our
help
knowledge
people.
everywhere, aren't we?
That's right.
So I am a lawyer. I have 2 legal practices. I am a mum as well. I do all the things. I do way too much, but one of the passions of mine is dealing with family law clients. Ideally, I'd like to save the relationship before they get to me, and I'm sure I'll be able to work that out in the future. But it's working with people to have an amicable and a holistic separation. We are very successful at mediation. Majority of our clients don't have to go to court unless the person on the other side isn't as holistic as us, and just trying to make that process really easy for people. There's piles of other things. I'm a trained hypnotherapist, an RTT therapist, mindfulness instructor. Like, there's so much more that I put into my legal practice than just the law. But that's probably my bad elevator pitch as to as to my introduction.
Well, I don't think it's bad at all, but I can see how you've got lots and lots of different skills. But I love that because it brings together a really unique experience for people. And like you mentioned, there's a holistic approach to what you do. It's not just about the letter of the law.
No, I learned, definitely had practice law differently to any of my other employments. And, like, I have had clients that have suicided, and it's dealing with that. And, I've done suicide prevention training and stuff as well. And to me, there's just so much more. And, it's, if a relationship ends because of addiction, it's working out, okay, so what's the cause of that addiction? There's something underlying for that person to have that addiction in the first place. And it's, as a lawyer, you're not trained to do any of the mental stuff. It's just the law. So it's understanding things and working out why something might happen. And that's why we're big on, well, is the relationship really done? Like, can we save it? Is there counselling? Is there something that we can do before we get to the legal side? And it's honestly, even the mindfulness stuff that I've done, it's honestly really come helpful to just to understand, some clients and how they've ended up where they are. So definitely not your typical lawyer. I've definitely done things that lawyers probably wouldn't have training for, but definitely found that useful in not every matter, but just just to understand more, I suppose, and how to deal with clients who might be, subjected to an addiction or mental health issues and things like that.
Yeah, the human side of
Exactly.
a person, which is never cookie cutter neat, is it?
No. And in law, that's generally the last thing that is at the front of a lawyer's mind, which I think is really sad. Law is more than just the law. There's, definitely the mental health aspect on the human side of that unfortunately is ignored, forgotten about. So we're not trained in that. So unless you kind of think outside the square, which is a bit sad. But anyway.
And we were just talking before about how unfortunate it is that the rates of divorce in families where their children have a disability are really high. And I was saying to you, I thought it was around 75%, and we did a quick search for the stats and it was maybe up to 85 or so. And that's really high, isn't it? And it reflects from my perspective how difficult it can be trying to navigate this process as a family. And also potentially sometimes when adults have their own diagnoses of these genetic conditions like ADHD and other things, the relationships can be tricky. But I loved that you said you felt like it was too high. You wanted to change that.
Yeah, I didn't think technically I think it said between 75 and 87.
Yeah.
I like the odds are stacked against them.
Mm,
And that's really sad. Like, why should they be at a disadvantage in a relationship because they got kids with high needs or they may have high needs? Getting tears in my eyes.
mm,
That's horrible. That's really bad.
yeah.
There's got to be something that people can do to lower that stat. I thought it might have been around maybe half, like 50, but to
Mm,
see it as high as 85%, like, people would feel doomed before they started. Like, it's why work in this relationship? Because stats tell us that we're going to end up in divorce anyway. So, like, what's the point in working in our relationship? Like, that's way too high.
yeah.
There's got to be a solution somewhere to reduce that, and
Yep.
whether that's a combination of psych and law and whatever it
Yeah.
is, I'm not sure. So I would much rather save a relationship than have to deal
Mm,
with the family law aspect. I'd rather lose business and work, not having to go through the family law side. Like honestly, I'd much rather that relationship saved. And we've had clients that have gone through that family law separation, and then docs are signed and filed and everything, and they've come back and it's like, so we got back together like 4 months ago. I'm like, oh my God, you didn't tell us. Like, oh, we just signed everything. Like, my God, like,
yep.
congratulations. Like, so they've worked out
Yeah.
themselves.
Yep.
Doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. But yeah,
It
the
would be,
stats of that are just they're that's yeah, that's not acceptable. That's horrible.
yeah. And we were just having the conversation before we started recording about how it's not, it would be nice for people to do stuff so that that's not the case. We were talking about how it's not people's fault. It's the
No,
lack
not
of
at all.
support around people, lack of knowledge, lack of things like respite so that families get a break.
Like,
Yeah.
difference of opinion as well. Like, if you're getting
Yes.
advice just from the one person, maybe that's not the like maybe you need a second opinion. Or like, to me it's like, so if you find a lawyer, you have to make sure that you're on the same page with that lawyer. If you don't
Yeah.
connect with them, don't have a relationship with them. Find somebody until you do. It's
Yep.
the same with this instance. If you're wanting to maybe find a holistic type of management for your kids, and this other person is like just jam Ritalin, or I don't know, Ritalin, whatever it is,
Yeah.
like down someone's throat, that's just masking the situation. It's not helping them deal, or it's not helping, whatever that might be. So definitely the person that you choose to help you manage that situation is so important.
Yeah. And it is about relationship too. It's the same with psychologists and doctors, as you've described with lawyers as well. You've got to have that relationship and trust there. And I encourage people too to keep going until you find that person.
Yep,
And
100%.
I guess in this case, it's the one that can have, you can, that both parents can have that relationship with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, explain the why. I'm a big reason about the why. I suggest you do this because of. It's not just I suggest you do this full stop.
Yeah.
It's daunting. I said, honestly, the odds are stacked against them. Like, 85% end in separation. Like,
Mm,
and if you have that in your head, like, it would mess you up. So that's, yeah, definitely have to work on getting that way, way, way down.
yeah.
But yeah, all about finding that right team, being open to the information that is that's being received as well. And, imagine that each child is different. So just because this works with another kid doesn't mean it's going to work with another child as well. So,
Yep.
yeah, I think, and getting that help early, don't be in denial if your child has you think your child does have ADHD or something, like there's no shame in it. There's no shame in
Yeah.
anything.
Yep.
So, don't be scared to even get that kind of diagnosis, so then you can move forward in your relationship to, not be that stat of, 85. Let's be that stat of 15 where you do stay together and you work it out. And, you might be able to help other families that, have, might have been where you are or struggling in their relationship. So just aim to be that 15, not the 85.
Yeah, and we have talked about how there's a few things that, I mean, you and I are both trying to help families with being able to know the strategies and things that will help to be able to make things work. Me with helping them know how to work with their children, and you have plans to help people work on salvaging relationships or protecting them and nurturing them so that they thrive.
Yeah,
That stuff maybe a little bit later down the track, but what we wanted to
it's
talk
on the
about,
list.
yeah, we've got big lists, don't we?
Massive list.
But because of that statistic, I guess we wanted to talk about if people do separate, because that's a time of really big stress for everyone involved, whether there are some first steps people can be aware of that might then lead to saving time and money down the, as they're going. Money and time is the two of the biggest resources families have. And
Yeah.
if you can give us some tips on how people might be able to save some of those things as they start this separation process, I think that could be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the first thing is don't be ashamed. Don't think that, you're bad because the relationship didn't work out or anything like that. Like, no shame. So
Mm,
first up, when a client comes to us, the first thing we ask is the relationship really done? We don't go straight into, yep, cool, let's go to court, let's take them for everything we want, like, let's get whatever.
yep,
It's like, are we really done? Can something be done? Can we do counseling? If there's addiction involved, can the addiction be dealt with?
right.
Drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, even, like anything
Mm,
like that, because there's a reason why that's happened. Like, can that be dealt with? Obviously, there's a caveat to that. If it's DV, we wouldn't be saying, hey, let's try and get him to stop hitting you or get her to stop
yeah.
hitting you. So caveat with the
Safety
DV.
first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so definitely safety. Well, and then we do, are you safe? Like, are you in a
right.
DV relationship? So that would probably come before, can we save the relationship? So making sure they're safe, no shame. And then going, okay, so if we are really done, then this is what the process is. So, and that's a case by case basis as well. You might be
Mm,
separating amicably. You
right.
might be conscious uncoupling. I keep calling it unconscious coupling. It's conscious uncoupling as
Yeah.
well, where you're doing that together and going through that process.
Yeah.
Or it could be really messy too. Or you
Mm,
might not even have that conversation. Having that conversation to end your relationship is also really, really difficult. So there's so many different things that, where you might be at. So saying the conversation's been had and, you're on the same, page and it's not nasty,
yep.
there's no DV or anything. Usually the first conversations with a lawyer, or at least with us, are, okay, are we amicable? Have we had a chat about, who gets what unfortunately it's meant to be the best interest of the kids, and sometimes the kids
Mm,
get forgotten, and that's super sad. And
mm,
when you have kids with high needs, it's even more important to make sure that the best interests of the kids are looked after, going between houses and stuff, making sure that's in their routine. It might not be a 50-50 split, like, there's so many different aspects of that. But with family law, so assets are something that we need. So if when you come to us, we have to go, okay, so you need disclosure. So what are the assets? What are the liabilities? So we
okay.
need to work out what the asset pool is generally. So you're going to be asked to bring bank statements, super statements, pay slips, values of cars, value of houses, value of anything asset, anything liability, what the debt is, and
Yeah.
everything.
Okay.
So that can be really daunting for people. And especially if there's one person in the relationship that's got control of all of that, the other person might not. But that's going to be something you need to put together. So all of that disclosure. Again, it depends whether you're talking to each other, not talking to each other. There's, this is pretty general. I should say it's not legal advice, but it's general information, I suppose. So disclosure is a big one. If you have that relationship and it's still on good terms, having that chat about, okay, so what are we thinking? The kids need a home. Can we separate it under one roof? Like, that works for some people as well. Not everybody, but sometimes that works. If you have an investment property, it might be that someone stays in the family home. Maybe you can boot the tenant out and, stay in the investment property, or, finding a rental that's close to the family as well. So you got that, like the housing consideration. Maybe there's family you can move into. So there's a housing consideration to be taken into account as well. Making sure that each party still has money. So, you might open up a separate bank account and start putting money, into that, and, making sure the mortgage is still covered and utilities. And, if rent's high, you might be splitting costs to, this would be the nice way to do it. Doesn't happen this way, but, if you can help each other out with, the basic needs of putting a roof over, their heads, and helping with money and things like that. So look, if you're on good terms, the separation is going to go so much more easier. There's obviously so many more things I can go into, like when it doesn't, and even choosing a lawyer. The lawyer can make or break a separation as well. But disclosure is something that you definitely need to be over. If you're going to leave the relationship, maybe before you have that conversation, make sure you got that type of stuff. Make sure you know where bank accounts are, what super statements there are, what, if there's shares and investments and things like that. That will save time as well, because sometimes there's one person in the relationship that's covering all of that. So, make sure you got a bit of an idea of what you've got maybe before you leave. But it's really just remember the kids. Like, even if you're not happy with one another, you need to not put that in front of the kids. And kids with higher needs, that even more important, because their reaction and stuff to it. But first of all, there's so much.
I know.
Don't want to overwhelm people.
But also I feel for you, it's like asking, there's a picture of the ocean there, and it's making me think about, like, you've got an ocean of knowledge, and I've just asked for a cup of strategies.
I know. I can see myself going a different tangent. I'm like, but if you're talking, and then if you're not talking to one another, and obviously DV is another whole kettle of fish. But my advice to be, without getting into the legal side, is check whether the relationship first of all, make sure you're safe. We're assuming there's no DV. Ask, is the relationship really over? Can counselling happen? And relationship can end because you stop putting the effort in, or it might be because there's the added stress on the family with kids with additional needs, and you're not taking your needs into account. So, there's many reasons why people separate. But if you're definitely done, try to have that conversation. Like, that's a whole other kettle of fish, trying to have that conversation with your partner that I think we need to go down a separation route. Then obviously telling the kids, we could do 50 million podcasts, I think, on all aspects of the lawyer side and the psych side as well. But if you can stay amicable, it's going to make it so much more easier. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily happen, but it's make sure you've got a roof over your head. Make sure you know where your assets are, because disclosure, and liabilities, because disclosure is something that you're going to have to provide to a lawyer.
I had a couple questions about that. But I think also for listeners, I would really encourage them to listen to your podcast, the Stacey M Show. Is that right? Because I think you've got so much knowledge about all the ins and outs of this, but it's great that you've got the podcast that covers little bits at a time, because to cover all the information at once is just too much. It's overwhelming at a time when it's stressful anyway.
And it's hard to stop. It's like, I need to just do this part, because it's easy to, and there's so many different scenarios.
There's so many. And so I would encourage people to get in touch either with me or with Stacey if you've got questions, because that could be another topic for a podcast as well, because there's so
100%.
many different variations.
Yeah.
But I hear you saying that it's, first of all, yeah, being amicable is going to make it easier across the whole process.
Yeah.
How do you define that word, amicable? I hear it a lot in terms of divorce, but what does it actually mean?
Not ripping each other's heads off, not using kids as pawns,
Yeah,
which
okay.
can happen. Sometimes they're amicable, but the lawyer that they pick shouldn't be the right lawyer
Yeah,
for them. They're a lawyer that just is hardball. Let's go to court. Let's take them for everything. So picking the right lawyer can make a really big difference in that.
yeah.
Each separation is different. Like
Mm,
if you're fighting every day, then all of a sudden you say you're done. That's like really hostile. So maybe how you communicate with one another after that might not be so friendly. And, again, there's no right way or wrong way to kind of end a relationship. Sometimes it might just spill out of your mouth. Sometimes you might have something planned. Sometimes you both might be on the same page. You might be like, hey, we're more friends. I think we can be better parents if we separate, but we make sure that the kids are our number one priority. So even that question is, incredibly broad, but it's not using your children as pawns, generally wanting each other to not be left disadvantaged and try and stay
yeah.
as much, similar family home, not to all of a sudden be eating 2-minute noodles for the rest of your life, which there's nothing wrong with. I got 2-minute noodles for tea tonight because my kids are not home. But it's trying to not disrupt the family so
Yeah,
much. And again, because you got that element with high needs, I mean, that can be a whole other that is a whole other,
yes.
an education session. But
Yep.
yeah, it's just, we have a clients fight over buckets and fairy floss machines, and like
Mm,
that's non-helpful. And that's where the mindfulness side comes in, and even okay, well, why are you reacting that way? Like people are hurt, like
yeah.
there's so much, but and not nitpicking at stuff. I
Yep.
find, just letting stuff go. You're not saying that you agree or you're right. Go vent
Yeah.
to a friend, write it down, talk in the mirror, and pretend that your ex is there and
Yeah.
blurt it
Rather
all
than,
out type thing. Yeah, it's difficult. It really is difficult.
mm,
But yeah, the amicable, I could Google, let's see what the Google
no,
definition is,
no.
but it's
I think
just,
you've explained it well, because
yeah,
what I think is then it's almost like trying to be friendly
yeah,
and trying to be caring still about making sure each other's best interests, you know, well, by making sure each other's looked after and that the kids' best interests are looked after as well, and taking that approach that's about trying to resolve the situation rather than fight your way through it.
yeah. And that might be a time process. So, if you say the relationship's done today, maybe just make sure everybody's okay. It might be that someone moves to a spare room or something, or you might share the same room, but you try and hold it together for the kids. Like you might want to consult somebody like you, for example, and go, all right, so we're separating. How do we do this with the kids? So you might be
Mhm.
living under the same roof for months because you're trying to not disrupt the kids and trying to work a way as to how
Yeah.
to tell them and trying to come up with the best plan for that. So,
Yep.
um,
And
there's,
it might be too that people need to seek their own support and help as well,
yeah,
because I hear you saying that emotions come into it a lot. And
definitely.
if each person has got a way of, helping themselves emotionally, that's going to make it easier to be amicable in this
Yeah.
situation.
I always say don't react with emotion.
Mm,
Almost never happens.
yeah. So hard.
It's a great art, I think, to not react with emotion.
Yep.
But yeah, it's, maybe you need to work on yourself. Maybe you need to go to a counselor to help you process things. Consult yourself, for example, is the best way to introduce this to the kids, and what routine is now going to be, because they could be across two separate homes, sorry. So it's, yeah,
Yeah.
there's just so many different little spirals. But if you can try and stay amicable, if you try and hold yourself together, if they say something, oh, but 20 years ago you whatever, you can try not to, you know
Voice.
at
Yeah.
them. I'm
Yep.
not saying that they're right. It's like, right, this this isn't helpful. It's not going to move the
Yeah.
situation along. Let's go vent to a friend, vent in the mirror, cry, whatever you need to
Yep.
do. But really, if you can try and stay as amicable as possible, it doesn't mean you agree on everything. I mean, if you got good lawyers, you got
Yeah.
mediators, like, I'm not talking that you have to work out everything first up. It's just something that's temporary, that's going to work for you. And just remember the kids, like the kids are the most important part. Put your egos aside, put whatever it is. You just need to make sure that those kids are supported, because, sometimes they're just forgotten about, and it's it's not right. And kids with high needs, that's another kettle of fish. So just remember the kids, try and not argue in front of them as well.
Yeah.
Like, don't go, don't try and make the ex bad in front of the kids. Oh, but your dad was meant to pick you up and he's late, or he doesn't want you, and that's like, that's not helpful.
Yeah.
If you're going to be that type of person, you're not our client. We will send you away. We will not, honestly, we will not act for you. That is not how we work. So, and we're very upfront with that at the start. So, but some people are like that. Good on you. I can't help you.
Yeah. So
I'm not the right lawyer for you.
yeah, so it's really about trying to take that friendly approach, keep going, like keep trying to communicate with each other without that emotion in it, and um, look after everyone's interests. And then the practical thing you mentioned was about that information that, well, first of all, practically thinking about how you can do that, how you can make sure everyone's got a roof over their head, but then also thinking about the assets and the money and all of the things that you have. So, and when you said disclosure, does that mean telling your lawyer about all that stuff?
Yeah, so each lawyer kind of handles it different, but disclosure it's a family law requirement. So usually in a relationship, everybody generally knows where everything is and what everybody has. Sometimes if there's secret stuff or suspicion of that, we get like forensic accountants. And again, that's a whole other kettle of fish, but assuming
Yep.
it might be like mum, dad, house, maybe a rental property. We got super. Let's just call it like really basic. Most people
Yeah.
know where that's at. And because that type of information needs to go into either the consent orders or the BFA, it's like, right, so we have the family home valued at this. We have the debt of the family home valued at this. And super is this. And a lot of the time, the female doesn't have much super because they're usually at home with the kids. So,
Yeah.
we need super statements. It's anything asset, anything liability. If there's secret accounts, we can sort that out later. But that's what's known to work out what's on the table. There's no point saying, I want $1 million and the assets are like 200,000. Like,
Yeah.
so it's knowing what's fair. But there's so many other areas of family law that are coming out now. So like collaborative training. So that's something that we're trained in as well. You can bring in financial planners, you can bring in accountants, you can, it's thinking outside the box as how you can best help your client as well. And I said, sometimes living under one roof helps, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong way, but disclosure is something I definitely recommend that you are over if you're not familiar with, I don't know, what super your ex is with or something. I'd familiarize yourself with that, if assuming that's accessible, in a filing cabinet or something like that. So I think that would definitely help you if you are the one that is to leave the house. But obviously sometimes it doesn't work that way, and there are secret bank accounts, and that's a whole other other thing. But having that general knowledge of, okay, well, what do we got? What can we afford? As well, if you're paying a mortgage and having to add rent to that as well, that's going to be taken into consideration. And you don't want to be, going from a beautiful family home to
One
living in a
bedroom
motel or
apartment.
something. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, and sometimes sacrifices have to be made, and that's usually only temporary. But you don't want to change it too much, especially for the kids. If mum and dad, or dad's in a really beautiful house and mum's in a, well, opposite way around, could be mum's in the house and dad's in a caravan or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I try and keep it pretty even. So but again, like there's so much, like it's just really, really hard to kind of yeah,
There
to
is, but that's
get it
why
going.
people need all that legal advice because every situation's different. But I
Yeah,
think you've helped us think through some of the first, the approach to it, which is really important. Friendly, trying to keep that open communication as well, but to gather some of that practical
yeah,
information that you're going to need to make decisions on. And I think too, the earlier people can start pulling together that information that, it gives you more time to think it through and make your decisions. So
yeah. I definitely want to be rushing in to anything. Like if you were
yeah.
separated today, it would be like, right, tomorrow we're going to go to law and we're going to sort it out and sign. Like there's emotion, and we say you have to work at the pace of the slowest person. So if one
Mm,
person wants a relationship to end and the other person is blindsided, they're not going to
yeah.
be in the right headspace probably a while to do anything or to think
Yeah.
clearly. So I would never say there's a right way, a wrong way. You have to do this, you have to do this. It's like, right,
Yeah.
here are some suggestions. See whether they fit your situation.
Yep.
And yes, there's legal stuff involved, but let's put a human aspect on that. And
Mm,
if we work at the pace of the slowest person, and that's not to say that they're slow in like
no, it's just like the
it's where
readiness.
they're at mentally type
Yeah.
things. So if
Yep.
they need time to process that, let's let them process that. If they need to go deal with an addiction before we can deal with anything, let's go do that. If they're at the point that their mental health is really bad, let's deal with that, because otherwise it's going to push them over the edge, and we don't want to go that far. We don't want to go there. So
Yep.
yeah, but don't think it's going to be done in a day.
Yeah.
I said you might be separated and it might be 6 months till you tell the kids. Like you've
Yeah.
got that
Right.
aspect of it as well. So
Yep.
I definitely make yourself aware as to what those initial stages might be. You're going to
Mm,
know how your partner's going to react if they're going to be blindsided by that. So take that into account. There's no right time, there's no wrong time. Probably don't do
mm,
it in front of the kids. I know this stuff is common sense, but not everybody has that. So they don't think it. So
yep.
yeah, but I'd definitely be across your assets, probably at a bare minimum if you are looking at moving out, just so you're not because the lawyer's going to go, what do you have? I don't know. Like
Yeah.
you've just wasted probably $500 because you're not across it. So
Yeah. So bringing that information and to the lawyer, getting all of that stuff together first. I like that advice a lot.
yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're going to be coming out with orders that day. It's just so you can get a bit of understanding. It's like, okay, so yeah, there's a bit of money here, or realistically, there's not much money here. The
Yeah.
family home has going to have to be sold, so you're probably going to have to rent. You want to buy somebody out, let's go speak to a mortgage broker to make sure that can happen. Like there's so many different, not
Yeah.
everything is the same, but disclosure is something that I would be on. Make sure you know where your assets are. Make sure you know where your liabilities are. Don't be unrealistic if the equity, the asset isn't there.
Mm,
And yeah, just don't forget about the kids. Like it's the kids. You need to make sure that they're okay and they're looked after. And if you get a really good lawyer like me on my firm, it is, we really do take that holistic approach.
yeah.
If you want to be vindictive and use your kids as pawns, see you later. We won't act for you. Like you're on
Mm,
your own. You can go find a lawyer that's going to do that. But as I said, not every, if you do react with emotion, it can be really tense. You might
yeah.
take a few months to even get to the point of, okay, well, what does this look like? What will we do? Like,
Yep.
just one stay, do we go? Do we sell? Do we manage it under one roof? Yeah.
Yep. So gathering information, taking your time and keeping the kids at the center of it. I think you're talking to the right person about that.
There's probably 50 other things I can add to that,
Oh,
but
I bet.
it's,
So
yeah.
if people do want more information and those 50 other things, where can they find you?
Probably 51 other things. So yeah, I do have the podcast called The Stacey M Show. It is very early days, so I'm developing that, and that's my whole pile of list as well. I do have a legal practice, aqua legal and conveyancing, and have the stacymunzenberger.com, which is formulating a course on empowered separation. So having that empowerment. If you want to play the victim, again, that's not for me. It's empowering you in that separation before, during, and especially after as well. So it's stacymunzen-burger.com. On socials that at Stacey Munson-Burger. I need a shorter surname, but I don't have one. Yeah, I love to have that holistic approach and try and educate people and then explain the why behind something and not just say this is it, full stop. But on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube.
Excellent. Awesome. That's so great. Thank you for providing all that info for parents who are going through this. And I'm sure
hopefully they're not. Hopefully they're the 15%.
Yes, hopefully. But I am sure we'll be having more conversations together with people too, given all the ideas we can share. But I really appreciate you coming on the show today and chatting with me. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for being on the same page of wanting, a nice resolution for people in this situation. So it's nice to be on the same page as, let's take care of the kids. Let's be, let's do this amicably and,
take care of each other and
exactly right. So
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Leanne, for having me.
You're so welcome. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Tran Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.